everyone. We will give everyone a minute or two to join. If you want to share in the chat where you're tuning in from, that would be great. Just a reminder that closed captioning is available under the closed caption button at the bottom, and there's also a stream text link that is in the chat. So, and for anyone who's using the ASL interpreter, it may be helpful if you want to pin the interpreter, you can right-click their video and pin it to screen. So depending on your preference, sometimes that can be helpful for folks so that the interpreter doesn't go off screen whenever someone is speaking. Right. Ooh. Let's see. Ooh, I see some folks are sharing where they're from. Let's see, from Kansas City, Missouri, New Jersey. Oh, yes. And make sure that whenever you're sharing in the chat, make sure that you are sending to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your comments. Oh, I see Arizona. Great. Minnesota, Maryland, Wyoming. Ooh. California, San Jose. Seattle, Kentucky, great. Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead. Oh, I see Pittsburgh. I'm originally born and raised in Pittsburgh. So Northern Virginia is where I am now. So see both hometowns here. Great. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on how ableism is keeping us from equal representation. My name is Sarah Blahovic. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the Civic Engagement and Voting Rights Organizer of the National Council on Independent Living. My work at NCIL focuses on the barriers that prevent people with disabilities from participating in civic life, including running for office. I'm the co-creator of Elevate campaign training for people with disabilities, which was specifically created to empower people with disabilities to run for office. For those of you who are new, She Should Run is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to dramatically increase the number of women considering a run for office. They motivate women from all walks of life to explore the possibility of public office by identifying and tackling the barriers to elected leadership through data-driven content, education, and collective action. Today's webinar is part of the Breaking Barriers series, and that exists to support women who, due to their race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, income level, religion, or any other reason, are experiencing layered forms of prejudice and therefore experience more challenges when running for office. In past sessions, we have discussed running for office with debt and navigating race and racism on the campaign trail. Today, we are going to discuss some of the barriers women with disabilities face when considering and pursuing a run for office, as well as how members of the disabled community can use their skills of adaptability, resiliency, and problem solving in elected office. Representation in politics matters, and having more women with disabilities serving results in better policy outcomes that better serve the needs of the disabled community and the entire community, I'd add. A few reminders before we get started. To participate in the chat, make sure the to line in the chat is set to all panelists and attendees. If you have a question, be sure to submit through the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Your feedback is very valuable. We will have an evaluation at the end of the session, and it'll take no more than 3 minutes to complete. Lastly, live captions are available, and there is a stream text link in the chat. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce our panelists for today and give them each a couple of minutes to share their story of self. So first, we have Mary Zendejas. She was elected to represent the 1st District of Long Beach in November of 2019, becoming the first Latina wheelchair user to be elected to public office in the nation. And I will hand it over to Mary to introduce herself further.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm very, very happy to be here. One of the things is I wish there was something like this when I was running back in 2019, but I'm very appreciative to be here today. A little bit about me. I have polio. I got polio at the age of 8 months old in Mexico. My parents decided that they wanted to provide me with better health care. So they brought me here to the United States around the age of 5. So they immigrated over here to the United States in search of better health care for myself. And indeed, I did get better health care. I was able to get a lot of therapy. I was able to get braces, a walker, and was able to just really take advantage of all the services that were here in the United States versus in Mexico. One of the things that I am very grateful to my parents for bringing me here to the United States when I was little is the fact that not only did they provide me with better health care, but I think that they provided me with an opportunity to live a life. And if I could go a little bit more into detail, what I mean about that is that because I was here in the United States, I was able to go to elementary school. Yes, it was a special school for special education. But I was able to go to school. I was able to have a bus that would come pick me up at my home to take me to school. And that was a big help for my parents, who now had a family of 9. So when I was growing up, my parents would always tell me that, yes, you have a disability, but that's not who you are. You are stronger than that. You are smarter than that. And you're going to go to college. I was the only one that my parents would say that to, because I think they knew that my sisters and my brothers, that they would probably go into getting married right after high school. I was the first one to graduate from high school, the first one to graduate from the university. And not only that, but the first one to have interest in running for office. It wasn't like I chose politics. I really feel that politics chose me. So I'm really excited to be here today and share a little bit more about how I got to where I am. So thank you, Sarah.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have Harriet Hines. Harriet is a 3rd-generation Brooklynite who learned business and real estate from her father and community activism from her mother. She has brought about $2 million to Brooklyn communities for food pantries, homeless housing, and after-school programs. And she recently ran for New York City Council District 40. So I will hand it over to Harriet.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Harriet Hines. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I did just have a recent run for City Council District 40. I'm also a single mother of 3 children. I'm a person with a disability. I got my disability as a result of chronic diabetes. In 2016, I fell down and fractured all the bones in my foot and ankle because I developed something called Charcot foot, where the bones became weak and brittle and the foot became a little deformed. And as a result, they had to completely reconstruct my foot and ankle. So that affected my mobility and has me now as a person that is physically disabled, but with very limited mobility. Also, as a result of it, diabetes also affect my eyes, where I have diabetic retinopathy and glaucoma, and now I'm considered to be legally blind. I found while running for office that, I became the subject of discrimination, from a lot of able-bodied people who, when they saw me take my pictures in my wheelchair, which is what I need to transport myself throughout the city, They felt that I wanted someone to feel sorry for me, that they felt that I should have used my cane. Though my mobility is affected, it was like I had to put on certain airs to, like, try to get campaign funds, and it was just, really bad. I ran also to represent an unrepresented population, a marginalized population in society that needs a voice, that needs someone to speak out for them. As a result, I joined the 504 Democratic Club, which is a Democratic club in New York for people with disabilities. And I also am a part of New King's Democrats, which is a Democratic political club in New York, where they did not have a platform for people with disabilities. So as a disability advocate, I brought a disability platform to NKD, which is New King's Democrats, and now currently they have a platform as a result of my efforts. And I thank you for having me here today. I am Harriet Hines.
Great. And then finally, Amanda Fullendorf has over a decade of combined experience in local, state, and federal government. Prior to being elected to the County Board of Supervisors representing District 4 in Calaveras County, she served as a city council member for the City of Angels Camp. During her time on city council, Amanda became the first deaf mayor in the United States. Amanda?
Hi, thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. Sarah summed up my background very well. I want to add to what my disability is. I became deaf when I was 7, or I found out that I was deaf when I was 7. From the age of birth to then, my parents were not aware that I had an issue not hearing them. I think they thought I was ignoring them a lot of the times. But what caught it was when I started to read, and my speech was delayed. I wasn't being able to catch up with kids in the classroom. And the teacher suggested that I go back to an audiologist. After various tests, the audiologist finally figured out that I had been adapting to my deafness by lip reading. And I have self-taught, I guess, lip reading, but just because I lip read does not mean that I solely depend on watching you. I also use ASL. I use a lot of other accommodations to assist me and help me get through the day-to-day life of being an elected official. I also wanted to note that my deafness is just one deaf story of a culture, an entire deaf culture. And I want to recognize that while I may speak for myself, or I use captions or ASL interpreters, that the deaf community is very diverse in itself as well, and that this is just my story and one journey of this. But to also echo what Harriet said and May, being the only person out there, it's difficult to rely on. So my experience, I'm still learning. My experience is still a journey. I'm traveling right now. As well as an elected individual on representing my community. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and I look forward to having a deep discussion about this.
Great, thank you. So I wanted to jump into some questions, and starting with, how can I talk about my disability to an audience that is unfamiliar with experiences like mine? And I wanted to start with Harriet on that.
Well, what I've found that's helped me is just being real. I mean, sometimes, like, when people are forced to be politically correct, it takes away the authenticity of the situation. What helps me talk about my disability is also catering to those groups who understand what I'm going through, like other disabled people, but also letting them know that I don't discriminate against the able-bodied. I try to let them know that, you know, having certain things accessible for us, that it also makes things accessible for them. It makes it so much easier for the situation to flow like fluid, for the conversation to flow like fluid. Just be real. Just be real.
Great. And Amanda, I wanted to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yes, I think the approach I take is education. I find that most people are more curious and don't know how to ask. Well, if you're deaf, how do you talk? If you're deaf, how do you drive a car? I mean, those are real questions that I get. And I think the first is, what is my background and my story? And because my parents were not aware that I could not hear, I grew up with a terminology called orally deaf. Speech was my first official language, but I use ASL and I depend on it on every aspect. So I think it's the approach of education, getting a really core support group, especially when you're running for a campaign. And even after the campaign, win or lose, you need that core support group internally to help you get through and help educate your community. I found that when I was a little bit more radical about my responses, I wasn't able to engage with the person. And then it became more of the topic of the disability and not the subject matter that we need to discuss. So my approach to that is just, it's education, be front with it, and then go on. But I do my best not to allow it to drag out through the entire campaign. It's my intro and let's move on. But I allow an open book policy, and it may not be appropriate in a public setting, but please reach out to me if you have questions and ask. And I think that has helped in being successful, along with a core network of support.
Great. And Mary, just wanted to see if you had anything to add to that. You're muted.
Thank you. I agree with both ladies' answers. I think that, you know, you definitely have to be yourself. You definitely have to be real. But you also have to be able to be an open book. And when you're running for office, there's kind of like, you have to be okay with being able to share your disability, your experiences with others, because that's what's going to really connect you to not only to your constituents, which is, you know, the people that you want to serve, but also, you know, to your funders and stuff, if you're real and if you really, you know, you speak from the heart.
Great. So how can you make your campaign about the issues and vision instead of, you know, focuses on your disability? And sometimes that comes with, oh, how can this person serve in office? And Amanda, you had mentioned that some people were asking about, like, oh, well, how are you speaking if you're deaf, things, questions like that. So how are you able to kind of reroute folks to the core message of your campaign and not those questions? Amanda, you want to take that?
You want me to respond? Okay.
Yeah.
When I do my intro, just like I did this morning, I try and start off with that and say, okay, you know, if you have any other questions about this, feel free to reach out. And I try and move it on and focus to what the questions are and push it back to the audience of, okay, what is your concerns? What are your community issues that you want to tackle? And I try to pivot, but I also use my disability to prove assets on why I can solve those problems. So for example, what if a question is, why do you think best at solving this? It hasn't been solved in 10 years. I believe that I can solve this because I'm able to bring people together and talk in a group and listen and have empathy to the situation. Because when you go through turmoils, or an individual that has barriers put up in front of them, you're better to look at the situation and find alternative solutions to that. So I use those type of tactics to turn it into what they may perceive as negative into positive. This is why, because I'm empathetic. This is why I'm able to listen, and because of this, that's why those are my strong suits.
Yeah. Great. And Harriet, you had mentioned that you experienced some people who are asking about, why are you showing pictures that using your mobility device? So how do you kind of get folks to focus on the issues instead of your disability?
Well, for my whole entire campaign, I was everywhere and into everything, though I had that chair. Even right now that the race is over, I'm still everywhere, and I have a lot of initiatives as an activist. So when I ran for my campaign, I only chose those issues that I can be very passionate about. And my platform had like 5 different issues there. And it wasn't because it was the next hot topic or what other people were interested in. It was those things that affected me directly. When I chose predatory development, I was able to speak passionately about it because I have been the victim of predatory development, where people next door had developers purchase their home. They came in, they got an Alt 1 permit, they built an extra story on top, and in the midst of them doing that, they destroyed parts of my home, and I'm currently in court. So when I speak about predatory development, it has nothing to do about me being disabled. It has something to do with something that directly affects me, things that I'm passionate about. When on my platform, when I chose to speak about quality and accessible education, I have 2 children with IEPs, one with an IEP with speech and the other one with a learning disability. So when I speak about COVID education and the lack of resources, with children with IEPs, that's something that affects me directly. So I'm able to be very passionate about it. Like I said, I have like 5 platform issues, and every single one of them affect me directly. So you, even though I'm in that chair, you're not going to look at me for being in that chair. You're going to look at me as a person that's knowledgeable about the issues, that's passionate about what she's speaking about, and that's it. And even right now, I'm everywhere on the news with certain initiatives, and you see me rolling in that chair, but you don't look at the chair. You look at what I'm talking about.
Great, thank you. Mary, I wanted to ask you this question. Were you familiar with kind of other candidates with disabilities, elected officials with disabilities, and what kind of peer support or lack of peer support is currently out there for people with disabilities who want to run for office?
The time that I ran, it was a short election, a short campaign time because it was a special election. So we have 3 to 4 months to really dive in and do our campaign. And at that time, I didn't have any role models. I didn't have someone that I knew personally that had run for office, any kind of office at that time. So I did feel very alone in that respects, but at the same time, my disability community fellow advocates came out strong for me. I mean, it was so awesome to see so many people in my campaign office every single day who had disabilities and challenges, but they still made it into my campaign office because for them and for me, this wasn't a personal win. It was a community win. It was a win not only for me, but for my fellow disability advocates. And I think that that's what, was really, really pushing all of us to push forward and be able to have representation at the city level, at this level. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful to now be connected to you, Sarah, and to Kathleen. I think that this is a really, really great thing, especially because I'm coming up for re-election again.
Great. And so I wanted to kind of switch now to discussion of, did you have to be an advocate on your campaign in addition to running your campaign? Did you come up against specific barriers and have to ask for accommodations? And I know, Mary, when we talked before, you actually had an experience with this. So I wanted to start off with you.
Well, one of the more easy to see experiences that I had was I did not have the luxury of being able to go door to door to talk to my voters, because in my district, almost every house had 2 to 3 steps to get to the front door of any of my residents. So that was a challenge in itself. I was really happy to have a great support group, including my mayor and several city council people that were on the council already. Because of my previous advocacy, I had those relationships already. So they were happy to come in and knock on doors for me. And that was like the theme. I will knock on doors for you, Mary, you know? So that was really awesome to have that. But one of the things that that I shared with you, Sarah, was that on my very, very first forum, I was super nervous. And I noticed the stage, and the coordinator for the forum was saying, you know, this is what we'll do. Everybody will be lined up on this table. When it's your turn, you'll stand up and give your introduction, and you know, and so forth. So she gave us the guidelines, and I was like, ooh, I go, that really puts me, I was thinking this, that really puts me at a disadvantage when all the other candidates, at the time, I believe there were 8 candidates, when everybody else is up, that's gonna be really hard for me. And it's gonna, I feel it's gonna make my presentation less than. And so I had to get my nervousness and get everything out, all my doubts that I had out of my head, and say, no, I need to really ask for this accommodation. So I went to the coordinator and I asked her if she could please ask all of the candidates to not stand up. That way it would be an even playing field for all of us. And she was like, oh my God, thank you for saying that. Thank you for telling me that. I'd be more than happy to ask the candidates if they're okay with that. And all of the candidates were absolutely okay with that, which was really good. And one candidate, I think, did it on purpose and stood up while she had her presentation, but it really did backfire because she wasn't being inclusive of me like the other candidates were. And so I think that that's, you know, something that we need to continuously do as candidates. It's advocate for ourselves, and really, even when we don't feel like we have, you know, like we should, or we feel nervous about it, or we're just being shy about it, we shouldn't hold that to ourselves, because this means that now that coordinator, if she ever comes across somebody else with a disability, she will now know to help that person feel equal to everybody else, that she should now ask all the candidates to sit down.
Yeah, great. And I wanted to ask our other panelists, Harriet and Amanda, do you have experiences having to advocate for yourself while on the campaign trail? Starting with Harriet.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Okay. Well, with me, I didn't ask for any special accommodations, though you can visually see that I needed them because of my mobility. When I was out on the campaign trail and I petitioned, my 7-year-old daughter and my 12-year-old son were my legs that I didn't have. They got signatures for me. I was there with them in my scooter, but they really went door to door. They hung up the door hangers. You know, they helped me get signatures. I really in process amount of signatures. And certain
Oh, you're
that were not accessible, I got that chair and I walked the best that I possibly could walk, though they saw it was a struggle. And when I got to my destination, I asked for any special accommodations. I tried to show my constituents that though I had a disability, that my disability would not stop me, that I was tough, that I could still do the job. So that's what my main goal was to show.
great. And Amanda?
Yes, but a lot of the times I actually would bring my own interpreters, or I would bring my own tools of whatever accommodation to the environment that I was engaging in. For the most part, though, my campaign team was pretty good at making sure I had questions pre-given, so I didn't have to rely if something went wrong with the audio, or what have you. But I did rely on my campaign team. I did bring my own interpreters. I brought my own tools. There just isn't a lot of support. I mean, those things cost, and not that you put a dollar amount on those, but it's just very difficult when you're running a campaign to get those type of resources. And I think that ties into all three of us and anyone out there. There are no resources for individuals that are running for election. We have resources for a community, we have resources for the public, but when you get to this level, there's nothing out there. So you become your own advocate, you become your own problem solver to engage on the trail. So for me, it was a mix, and I would relate to Harriet and Mary as well.
Great. So whenever it comes to inviting different groups to be more supportive of disabled candidates, how can you work with, political parties, political insiders, and also just the community to educate them on being more inclusive and more supportive of disabled candidates? And Amanda, do you want to start?
Sure. In my role, I come a nonpartisan seat, so there wasn't a lot of the political party engagement, but being in the middle of a presidential, it was a little bit difficult because you had the higher election happening and filtering down to how you had to engage with the public, and it made it more difficult when guilty on both sides were making ableist comments in the media, and those were part of local elections as well. So trying to get past that and putting national elections aside and focusing on it's not party, it's community, and that way I was able to get both political parties to look at that, and it became about the issues. I just, like I said earlier, just flipping the questions back into them. What are your concerns? What is your passion? What do you want to see done? And making it about subject matters, not about there's red or blue or this support. That shouldn't be that isn't the issue. It should be a bipartisan topic to support that. And once you got that conversation going, it's like, oh yeah, you're right. I know so-and-so. And so, okay, well, why is my disability hanging on who you're gonna vote for on a national election? It should focus on community only, and not even engaging in my community. It's very rural. So reaching out and we don't have a lot of those exposures. So I'm the first exposure they get, and just reaching out, making myself available, going out to the community. That was how I got them used to, this is me, and you either love it or you don't. And call me if you want to talk more about me rather than the topic issues. But again, I think it's that we at this group advocating that this isn't a red or a blue issue. This is a bipartisan issue that need to fix the policies to support us as an elected to get to where we're at and find that network support system.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially as we just passed the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act this week, which was a very big bipartisan issue. It was a bipartisan bill. So, we have a lot more work to do on that. Harriet, I wanted to ask you this as well. What can you do to get political parties in the community to be more supportive of disabled candidates? Because I know you have experience with this with your local, Democratic clubs.
Well, I've always been the type of person to take the bull by the horns. Like, if you don't accept me, I'm gonna make you accept me. Like, I'm gonna make you include me, because my whole campaign ran on accessibility and inclusivity. Again, when I entered the New Kings Democrats and they didn't have a group for the disabled, I made the group for the disabled. When you mentioned the 31st anniversary of ADA, was it the other day? It was the day before yesterday. I was up in Manhattan at 7 o'clock in the morning for Good Morning America, me and my whole disability group, and we held out big signs and everything, and we got, our faces shown on Good Morning America. I even went and spoke with Robin Robertson, whatever her name is. And, it's like, how can I say? My whole campaign slogan was, if I can, we can. I make you include me, because why? I do more than the average able-bodied candidate, especially even for this campaign. I was involved. I had to be involved in so much more than them just to be recognized and just to be taken seriously. So that's how I deal with it.
Yeah. And Mary, do you have anything to add? Oh, you're muted again.
There I go again. One of the things that really helped me, I think, during the campaign is my past experience and my past involvement with all kinds of organizations in the city. I think that everyone saw me, all my friends saw me in this position, but I didn't really get to see myself in this position. I was just doing the work, I was out there in the community. And I think that that's what helped me to be able to reach out to even, other organizations that I didn't know about and really share, what I thought were the important issues in the district. And I think that that got me a long ways, where they would see that, oh, and you've worked with this organization, and you've been an advocate for this organization for all these years. And, so my resume with these organizations really gave me credibility. And I think that that's what helped me in this election, and helped them to come support me and be able to really get behind me as a candidate and as an organization.
Great. So I wanted to shift to kind of, we've talked a lot about discrimination as a disabled candidate, but I wanted to talk about the, unique strengths that disabled candidates bring as elected officials. So how do you feel like your experience as a person with a disability makes you a stronger representative? And starting with Mary.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to refer back to a comment that Harriet made, and that is that being a person with a disability, we have to work twice as hard just to be on the even playing field. And I think that us as being individuals that have disabilities and that live with disabilities day in and day out, we're used to working twice as hard. So that's what our constituents get, is they get a person that's gonna be working really hard. And like Harriet said, more than the average person in this seat. Like, for example, when pre-pandemic, when we were in the office, they would tell me, oh my, councilwoman, this is the most, you're like the councilwoman that I see the most on this floor. And I'm like, well, it's gonna keep being like that, you know, because they weren't used to council members being in the office all the time. And that was me. I was always doing stuff in the office, out in the community. And so, yes, we definitely are hardworking individuals that when we get out there, and we're also compassionate. We're compassionate with the experiences that our residents have. For example, I have a lot of residents that are low income in my district, and a lot of them that struggle with housing. And so one of the things that, you know, I was able to do is be more compassionate when we had policies, or bring forward policies that would address some of the issues that we were facing in the community, as well as one of the things that I brought forward, and you might have heard of it, is the Heroes Pay. But the reason that I brought the Heroes Pay forward, and that's where all the stores would pay $4 more to their workers, $4 to $5 more to their workers in the grocery store during the pandemic. And the reason that I brought that forward was because I was compassionate, and I knew people that were in that field and that, you know, were really struggling with bringing home the virus and giving it to their whole family. And I think that being able to experience that firsthand and being able to bring forth policy like that just gives us like a better understanding of what issues are out there, and makes us stronger in the long run.
Great. And Amanda, do you want to add?
Yeah, Mary made some great points. We all have a lot of reading to do. So my special power is speed reading. I think I can do laps around even one of my good friends who's a professor in research and of literature. And I think that's a great asset to have, because if you can't read and comprehend what is coming in front of you to be best at navigating the policies you're about to vote on, it can be the job is trying. Empathetic, I would say empathetic because of the challenges that we face in our personal life. We're able to connect more when the community's hurting, and understand and get down to what they're trying to communicate through the emotions of it. And adversity or diversity, easy to change. I can pivot. I am okay with last minute things, because even in my day-to-day, if the captions aren't working on a Zoom call, I've got to scramble and make sure I have a backup device. So changing and shifting how you do things, how you make policies, outside the box thinking, I think those are all amazing assets that we don't look at when we're looking at a candidate. And because we do that in our day-to-day lives already, we're able to bring that into our with our colleagues and our peers and challenge them to that same mentality of thinking and change and looking at change in a positive way, in a different way than you would normally do, because it's been done 20 years ago, for the last 20 years.
Great. And Harriet?
During my campaign, it was my mission to show that I was inexhaustible and unstoppable. I mean, I made it a point to let people see that during petitioning, I have so many pre-existing conditions, and, you know, a person that could have, you know, actually took an ill due to COVID, but I was out there and I was petitioning regardless of all those pre-existing conditions, you know, showing them that, you know, that I was unstoppable. There was even a time when we had a forum and my diabetes really had took me under the weather and I was hospitalized for 5 days. I actually conducted that forum from my hospital bed. People saw all of these wires and heard everything, you know, the beep, 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 and they were like, oh my God, we have so much respect for you, you know? And that was my mission, the whole campaign, that irregardless to whatever I'm going through, irregardless to whatever my conditions are, that I'm inexhaustible and I'm unstoppable. And that meant that I honestly do feel, I mean, I can't say, but the average able-bodied person, I don't even think that they would have put themselves through that, you know? And so I just tried to show that I am the best candidate. And if I can, we can.
Great. So I wanted to go to our Q&A. We have some great questions in the Q&A. Starting with one from Claudia. I have a voice disability that makes it difficult for me to speak for long periods of time. When it flares up, my vocal cords shut and I pass out. Call time is going to be the literal death of me. Do you have any ideas on how to make call time more accessible for those of us who have voice disorders? Anyone have thoughts on that? I don't see Claudia. Let's go ahead.
One of the things that that you learn, and that us being in the disability community, is that we are very creative. We tend to be very adaptable and very creative. And one of the things that for me that worked, because I couldn't get into my constituents' homes or front doors, was to really focus on raising money and being able to send brochures and mailers into people's mailboxes and really, quote unquote, annoy them with my picture and with my name, and just, you know, be out there. I know that when I was campaigning, I actually had recordings that I would record and then send those out to either the cell phones or send those recordings out to the house phones. So thankfully, technology has advanced in so many ways that I would recommend something like that, and just being creative and being open to trying other things and making sure that you get your name out there and your picture out there.
Great. And our next question is from Rashira. Can you talk about the importance of being connected to the larger disability justice movement while maintaining your political endeavors? Harriet, I was interested in your opinion on this because I know you're very involved in advocacy.
Yes. Again, when you run, you have to also bear in mind that you have to address those issues that are not just those issues with disability. So what I have to do is I definitely immerse myself with all of the disability advocate groups that I can, and I stay active, you know, with it. Again, like I said, with 504 Club, that happens to be 504 Democratic Club, that happens to be a political disability group. I'm also, you know, involved in other things, like where I have a situation now, an initiative where I'm dealing with children with special needs, trying to stop New York State from sending children to the Judge Rotenberg Center to be electric shock tortured. That's a disability issue. It's become an international issue. I was telling Sarah right now, as I'm in the car traveling right now with the parent of the child that was electric shocked in at the Judge Rotenberg Center. I'm up here right now trying to find him an adequate placement facility in upstate New York. So I'm constantly involved with issues regarding disability, just constantly involved. And you have to, as a candidate with disabilities, as a person with the disabilities, we have to promote change. We have to promote awareness. You know, it's an ongoing struggle, it's an ongoing battle, but society has to be able to accept us and include us into everything. So you just can't stop, though you have to also address those issues for that, you know, that are important to the able body as well.
Great. Next question from Dana. As a disabled woman, I have learned to advocate for myself. However, as I contemplate candidacy, a concern of mine is a lack of translators on the campaign trail. Is it okay for me to bring an ASL interpreter and Spanish translator wherever I go, since I never have seen them there for any other candidate on the local level? And Amanda, I'm wondering your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Bring one. When I first ran for city council back in 2014, one of the comments I received was, don't bring an ASL interpreter because it's only going to bring more highlight to your disability. And what I learned was it wasn't necessarily what I was going to encounter on the campaign trail. It was the people around me couldn't see me getting hurt. They didn't know how to handle with that type of discrimination. And I ignored all that, and I brought the ASL interpreters with me. If somebody wanted a town hall and they weren't gonna provide it, I wouldn't show up. Or it would be a coordinated effort with my current interpreter team that I had become friends with being in the deaf community, to help me out how to figure this out. Like, hey, they're not doing this and this is uncharted territory. What do I do? And at the beginning, I got some friends that would come and interpret, who are certified interpreters, help me out and get me through that first leg. And of course, bring it. And if you can't, and they're not, and the platform that you're in, don't do it. Find another platform. And that's what I would do when you're talking about changes and shifting. I found other platforms to get to my audience that I needed to get to. And that's when those hurdles were in front of me and I was being told no. I don't like being told no. And I found my own way, even if it meant hosting my own town hall. And that's what I started to do. So then that way I was in control of it. And by control, I mean, I had the questions prepared. I had the team there navigating the crowd to help me facilitate, so I could appropriately answer to them and didn't miss what the question or misunderstand what the question, the interpreter. So absolutely do it. And if you don't, that's part of that advocacy in yourself. It makes you stronger, and you've got to stand up and say no. I mean, how would you feel if you were going to that candidate and you asked? So it needs to be, you would be strong about that. So there's no harm shouting from the rooftop, supporting yourself to say, hey, I need this.
Great. And I think we have time for just one last question from an anonymous attendee. In regards to Mary's experience, what do you say to those that are abrasive or dismiss opportunities for inclusion when you are on the stage or in the moment? And how do you get your point across for why inclusion is important without dipping into being accused of being too emotional?
That's a great question. And one of the things that you have to do is remain focused on the questions, remain focused on the issues, and kind of like it. You don't want other people's actions on the campaign trail to affect you, because you're tougher than that. Like Harriet said, you got to demonstrate that you're tougher than that. And you're going to keep pushing forward. So, you really want to make sure that you bring about, and in your answers, you can always highlight the importance of inclusion. Like Amanda was saying also, there were certain forums that I didn't want to go to because I felt like, no, they are just going to be attacking me because I have all this support, because I was one of the candidates that had the mayor's support and the support from the previous council member, and people were like taunting me for that. But in reality, that was a great support to have. And I was very proud of it. So every time people would attack me because of that, or say, or pity me, because some of people would pity me and say, "Oh, how sweet, she wants to run." And that just gave me more energy to say, you know what? I'm not only going to run, but I'm going to run and I'm going to win. And I'm going to beat you at this, you know? And so, and that's what I did. That's exactly what I did with the help of everyone, though. You really got to bring in everyone to help you achieve your goals.
Well, thank you for that. We're really grateful to all of our speakers today. This was really fantastic. Mary Zendeja, Harriet Hines, and Amanda Follendorf for sharing your experience and expertise with us. We're also grateful to all of our attendees for showing up today, asking thoughtful questions and committing to support the cause of women's political representation. So just wanted to close out and another thank you. This was really wonderful to hear from your experiences and hopefully, you know, see much more from you in the future. I know Mary is running for re-election. Harriet's very involved in advocacy and Amanda's on her second elected position. So I'm sure we'll see much more from you. As we close out today, there will be a brief survey. It only takes about 3 minutes, and it allows She Should Run to continue to provide events and activities that address your questions. You can find the link in the chat. She Should Run helps demystify the path to public office and discusses the roles each and every one of us play in advancing women's representation. If you'd like to continue today's conversation, we invite you to join the She Should Run community and continue to engage with some of the incredible women participating as attendees today. So just thank you again to our speakers for taking the time to talk with us today. And thank you all for attending, and we hope you have a wonderful day.